Around the Ozarks is now on your FM radio. Listen to Around the Ozarks mornings with Grace Gooley as I spotlight local people, stories, and podcasts, all while playing the country legends of the 90s and the hit makers of the 2000s. It's on the Ozarks' best country, 105.1 The Bull.
Everyone likes breakfast any time of the day, and that is what you'll get at Ma's Place Family Restaurant and Pit-Style Barbecue in Kimberling City. Start off your day with Bruce's homemade biscuits and gravy, or how about their monster 3-egg omelets? For breakfast, lunch, or dinner, be sure and stop by Ma's Place Family Restaurant and Hickory Smoked Pit-Style Barbecue in Kimberling City. Ma's Place, downright good food.
You're listening to The Real Deal Conversations, a podcast designed to encourage, inspire, and equip you by sharing real stories and meaningful conversations that bring real life to the surface. I'm your host, Megan Deal. Let's dive in. This episode is brought to you by Ozark Veterinary Clinic. I am with the ladies from Touchstone Counseling out of Ozark, Missouri today. We are going to talk about all things teenage brain, teenage behavior. And side note, we've actually already recorded this. It didn't record, so we're doing this again. So if I word anything as if we've already done this episode, it's because we already did. So we're starting again. And I'm going to have the ladies introduce themselves, what they specialize in. I think it's really important because if you guys are listening to this and you're like, oh, I could definitely use speaking to them on the regular, you'll at least know what they specialize in and what they do. So I am going to start with you, Chastity.
So I'm Dr. Chastity Arnold. I'm a clinical psychologist. I have a couple of specialty areas. One being the women's mental health across the lifespan. So starting with young girls and teenagers all the way up to past menopause and the transitions that we go through in life and things like that. And then I'm also a first responder psychologist. So I work pretty closely with law enforcement, fire departments, EMS, those kind of people to make sure that they get the help that they need with all of the very difficult things that they do in their life and their career.
That's awesome. And I personally can recommend her. And I also recommended my friend's kiddo to her, and they recommend her. And so Chastity is great. All right. Cindy, Dr. Baker.
Well, hello. And
Hello.
I'm Dr. Cindy Baker. I'm the owner of Touchstone Counseling, but I would say I, too, have two areas of specialty. One would be assisting area courts in dealing with high conflict co-parenting when parents are struggling in a divorce situation or in a court modification and they have minor children. Mm-hmm. So I love doing that. Second, I appreciate doing reunifications, and that is where I facilitate bringing an estranged or an alienated parent back into the life of a minor child. Those are very difficult, but they're wonderful when they work out.
And my name is Jennifer Baker Hornick, but I like to go by Jenny. I work a lot with the courts. I'm a certified trauma and adolescent professional, certified trauma adolescent professional, and a certified clinical trauma professional. So a lot of trauma dealing with the courts, but a second passion or specialization that I have is working with individuals who are struggling with affairs. Mm-hmm. That's something that I wrote my seminar paper on. I love helping individuals through that journey. And then I'm also an adjunct professor at Missouri State University for the group counseling class. So,
love it. Yeah, that's awesome. And I also want to make mention that you have also taught a class for teens
on
healthy dating.
Yes.
And I mentioned this last time, but I want her to do another one because, and then actually, Chastity, you just mentioned today that you are doing a class which is about to end on teenage and their big emotions. Yeah. So if you follow their page, I have noticed that they have little classes like that pop up. I especially am interested in anything that has to do with teenagers, just being a parent, you know. Mm-hmm. But follow Touchstone Counseling so that you guys can get updated on those classes. So.
I think they're actually getting ready to do one for 8th graders going into high school because that transition is just intense for them. It's new. There's so much going on. So they're getting ready to release when that's going to happen.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so let's kind of dive into this. The teen brain got a lot going on. Boys and girls, a lot of big emotions, a lot of navigating, for me, navigating them wanting to have freedom. How much freedom is too much freedom? How much, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to underdo it. You want to give them their space. You also want to hold them close to you. It's a whole thing for us parents navigating the teenage years and giving them the space to process their big emotions, but also reel them in and say we need to be respectful. And I just think there's a lot. And what I learned from you ladies when we originally recorded was there's just a lot going on in the brain that they don't even can't even control. Right. So the prefrontal cortex development versus the emotional center. So what is actually happening in the teen brain? Give us some foundation on that.
So research tells us that the prefrontal cortex and the frontal lobe of the brain do not fully develop until about age 25, 26. So your teenagers are in that growth stage of the prefrontal cortex. And that's where things like decision making and logical thinking and anything that kind of controls impulses comes from that prefrontal cortex. So right now they're leading with their amygdala, which is another portion of the brain that is the emotion center of the brain. And they don't have that logical thinking to kind of mitigate the emotions that are feeling at the forefront right now.
So, okay. And is it different for boys and girls in development? Do girls develop it faster and kind of mature faster?
Girls do tend to mature a little bit faster, hit puberty a little bit earlier. Their growth is very similar, but the maturity level is a bit different.
Okay. And so the reason I ask is because I did have somebody ask me about this, just in casual conversation. And it was the difference between girls and boys in maturing and their actions and just seeming more. So like 25, does the brain stop earlier for girls in development, or is it still at 25 for both?
It still grows up until about age 25.
But they just seem to...
They mature and make different decisions earlier. And that's partially because they hit puberty earlier than boys.
Okay.
So the average age, I believe, now for girls hitting puberty is about 10.
Oh, okay.
Whereas with boys, you're looking at like 13, 14. So
Really?
It's a very extreme difference between the two of them in terms of puberty. And those hormones regulating some of that stuff are present in girls before they are in boys.
Okay. So it's not that they have like some superiority in like reaching the finish line. It's just because theirs starts sooner.
Well, I guess that depends on who you ask. But yes, theirs starts sooner.
Okay. All right. That makes sense then.
I'd like to add a little bit to your first question. And I think what's really important that I read, and it was fascinating to me, people say our teens are so different today and their brains are different. Realize they're not. It's the same brain development that it always has been. We have one part of our brain that is really doing well. And then we have another that hasn't even been developed yet. And the one that hasn't been developed is that common sense and reasoning. But what's different today for our teens would be life circumstances. So it's the environment we live in now that changes the behavior of our teens, not the biological process, if that makes sense.
And so I have a question because it's something that I have struggled with is, and what I learned from you ladies, again, is where I thought teens, the way they responded, the way they interacted, like pausing, like asking them questions, hey, my son's Eli. Hey, Eli, did you do this? And then pausing and looking away, I thought meant like lying, trying to be deceptive. And that's not always the case. And it's, so can somebody kind of explain that? Because I know a lot of parents, again, because we filter everything through our adult mind. And when an adult does that, if an adult pauses, looks away, we're going to be like, you're not telling the truth. Mm-hmm. And so we put that on our children as the same thing. And that's not the case, which was fascinating to me.
Yes. So more often than not, teenagers, when they are preparing to answer a question, they aren't sure about their answer. And so they're thinking through it, hopefully, before they answer. And so it doesn't always mean that it's a body, like we think of body language when we're thinking about adults, and that's a body language hint to us that somebody maybe isn't being truthful. But in teenagers, it's more they're unsure of themselves and they're not sure of their answer, or they're not even sure of, if you're asking them a question about why they did something, they may not even be sure of why they did it.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to give an answer to a question that they don't really comprehend or process totally.
And so how can parents navigate that? Like, how can we navigate those conversations to where we're not jumping the gun on them and making them feel like they're on the defense, but also doing our due diligence to know that the truth is being told still? I mean, that doesn't mean that kids don't lie.
Right.
You know, so what can parents be doing to navigate those situations?
Right. Like, knowing that sometimes it does take them a little bit to answer the question, but also knowing how to ask the question, because a lot of times you're going to have a response of, when you do say, why did you do that? The answer will be, I don't know. And then automatically the parent goes to, that's disrespectful, or, you know, you're being sarcastic. So being able to sit down, be like, I'm not angry, I'm not mad, I just want to have a discussion. So it already kind of clears the air. You're not in trouble. Let's just talk about what happened and try to figure it out together.
Yeah.
They might feel like you're more as a team versus trying to figure out all of the angles of what's the lie, what's happening, did you sneak out, and already you're guilty. So being able to ask the question in a way that they feel that they can respond more openly and process it with you.
So the response, I don't know, drives me crazy.
I know. Yeah.
And the reason why is because, again, why it's also beneficial to learn from you all about these responses, because I don't know, to me is like you're sideswiping it. I'm like, because to me, I'm like, how do you not know?
But
like
sometimes they truly don't know. It was like just a knee-jerk reaction. They just did it. So and then you would ask, well, why did you do that? I mean, it sounded fun. Well, why else wouldn't I do it? Or, it looked really cool.
Yeah. So. Which would, I guess, go back to the impulse.
Yeah. Let's use your son.
Yeah.
So he's 16.
Yeah.
And Jenny, your son is 16.
Yes.
Dr. Arnold?
My daughter's 14.
14. When you start looking at that 15 to 17 age range, and you catch them off guard, they're going to go into some type of a fear state, and they don't know if they should tell the truth or not. They don't want to lie.
Yeah.
But you've caught them off guard, and because that reasoning part of their brain to give you an honest answer is underdeveloped, they're going to say, I don't know, or come up with a quick response that really isn't the truth because they don't want to get in trouble. It's pretty basic.
Yeah. And so how do we create a space where, like, this is what I tell, okay, so I have 16 and 14 and 9, and 16-year-old internal, 16-year-old doesn't want to get in trouble, 16-year-old, all the things, right? 14-year-old will tell on herself. 14-year-old will tell me, but she doesn't even need to tell on, she's given me the rundown. Like, there's no, you just know, she's an open book. And so that's why it makes it harder with, my 16-year-old, because he is internal and it's trying to respect, but my husband's internal too. It's not a bad thing to be internal. And so it's trying to give them the space to be who they are naturally, but also saying, I need you to give me a little more information, a little more communication, just because we are building trust over time. We are building trust through these teenage years. And so it's trying to navigate that balance of respecting who they are naturally, but also saying, I need a little bit more because I'm your mom.
Right. And I think you're going to get simple answers from a lot of teenagers, male and female.
Yeah.
They're going to answer with the least amount of information possible. because they're thinking about, 1, am I going to get in trouble?
Yeah.
2, am I going to get my friends in trouble?
Yeah.
Or is mom not going to like my friends because of this?
Yeah.
And she's going to tell me to stop hanging out with them. Like, they're running through all of those questions in their head and then trying to come up with something to tell you that meets your needs, but also meets theirs.
Yeah. And so how do we navigate that?
Education. And I hope we help today. Because I think what's really important, so many parents don't have training in the teen brain and what's going on. And we think they think like we do, and they do not. So oftentimes we teach, why don't you as a parent be that prefrontal cortex for them, be their logic, be their common sense. And parents are going to say, well, I do that all the time anyway. When do we do that? We wait until they're calm. So if they're in a heightened state and we want to lecture and we want to teach at that point in time, do you really think they're absorbing what they need to absorb? A lot of times they're already thinking what they want to say next to defend themselves or not lose their car. And so they're not really focused on what we want to teach. So one thing too is to make sure that we give them that calm down period. That was what you started with, Megan, that pause. And then when we can go talk with them, not lecture, but really get them involved in why it's okay to really own up to some of their things. And we'd much rather they tell the truth and not lie to us or not sugarcoat something that happened that was maybe much worse than we were told, and be their lens to help them realize that there is a way to put emotions into words and to be able to tell what you did without it being the worst thing you're ever going to do the rest of your life.
And with Dr. Baker mentioning a time frame when an individual goes into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, it takes about 30 minutes for the body to get back into a regulated state. So trying to sit down and talk to your child, if there's been yelling, crying, other things, their system might not be at a point where it can have like a good conversation. So allowing 30 minutes to go maybe to their room, calm down, breathe, and then come back when even the parent is in a better state will allow for a better conversation to take place.
Yeah, that's what we talked about this, the difference. So Ellie, my 14-year-old, I can have a conversation with her. I can tell her the rundown. I can say, this was not good. This is what we need to be. Like, I can have that whole conversation face to face at that moment with her, and it's fine. Eli's, again, very different. And so what I learned with him is what works for him is if we're having a conversation in the moment, he very easily gets frustrated. He very easily shuts down. And so what I started doing is shutting the conversation down, saying, just go ahead and go. And then I'll text him, and and that also helps me find the right words, because in the moment I'm a lot of these scenarios are new. And so I'm trying to find the right words in the moment. He's trying to, and it just gets jumbled and it ends up frustrating for both of us. And so what I found works with Eli is texting him after I've, run through the words, made sure like, okay, does anything in these sentences put him on the defense? And I'll text him. And guys, I'm super pregnant and I'm running out of breath. So I'm okay if you guys hear me breathing heavy. Okay. So and he'll text back, and that's when the frustration's gone, and he'll text back very mature responses. One time he responded with, "It does frustrate me, but I respect where you're coming from." And I was like, wow, that's really, like, it was so shocking because it was so mature and so respectful that I was like, are you deceiving me? Like, are you trying to, but like you guys had mentioned before, it's because he had time to process. And so his responses are processed instead of on the defense, getting frustrated and shutting down. So Ellie, we communicate in person all the way through. Eli is a lot of text messages. And also, I didn't realize, because I talked to Dr. Arnold last week, I had some things in parenting that I was like, I just don't know how to handle this. And I, through talking with Dr. Arnold, realized I have been telling him everything I don't want him to do, but I have not been creating a space for him to know that if he does do it, I'm here to walk through it. And so I went home after that conversation with you, Dr. Arnold, and I texted him it because I knew he wasn't going to absorb it if I told him. And I said, hey, I realized today that I've been telling you everything I don't want you to do, but I've not been able to communicate or not communicated to you that even if you do something that I don't like or your dad doesn't like, we're still here for you. Mm-hmm. Like if you mess up, if you get in a car accident, if you do the things that don't fall in line with your dad and I don't ever want you to think that we're not going to be here to walk through it with you. I want to walk through it with you now while you are in our house and while you're learning. And so I really had to think about how I've been telling them rules without giving them the fact that, hey, we're still a safe place.
I think that when we explain to teenagers especially that you're allowed to mess up. Yeah. It's developmentally appropriate that they're messing up. And we give them that space to come learn from that mess up and not just get in trouble for that mess up. They respond so much better. Yeah. And also texting, you're meeting them where they're at. Yeah. Like teens in this generation text and they communicate that way with their peers. And so when you are able to send them something in that way, I think you're meeting them in the place that they are.
Yeah. And not being afraid to say that we don't have all the answers and we mess up and we're learning as we go as well. Absolutely. And saying, hey, sorry that I worded this way for so long and didn't make you feel like I was a safe space to come to, and just we're all navigating it together.
And I love that because there's nothing wrong with going back to your teen and saying, hey, I'm sorry. I think I overreacted. That got a little heightened. Yeah. Let's start the conversation over. Yeah. And at that point, helping them know that it's okay. And even parents make mistakes, or not even mistakes, but that parents have emotions too. And that there are times that we're overreactive. But I think a point that we talked about last time that's really important for parents to do is to make sure you are modeling for your child, that you go first. Dr. Arnold mentioned texting. One thing we want to do as parents is to carve out that quality time, that family time, by disallowing technology at the dinner table. I want the family, if appropriate, to put cell phones in the kitchen at bedtime, knowing that some parents need their phones for their jobs overnight, of course. But let's turn technology off at bedtime so everybody gets a good night's sleep. But some parents can't. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you set a tone in your home for everybody, your children will fall into that pattern.
And I kind of want to segue into giving them space at the house and also technology. I think that's a good segue into that. And what I didn't realize and learn from you ladies is what the phone is doing to their mental health, even without social media. Right. And because it's very assumed, it's the social media is the problem, which it is, but there's more to it, even if they don't have social media on their phone. Right. So let's start with technology and what it's doing to the mental health and their brain being underdeveloped and kind of, educate everybody on what's going on there.
I'll let Dr. Arnold handle the brain part, but I would say what I see in my practice a lot is, especially with my teens and even my males, is comparison of bodies or just the trips that they're on, all of the things that they're doing, but they then look at themselves and internalize that they're not enough, they're not skinny enough, they're not smart enough, they're not doing all of the things, and then that's when I've seen, eating disorders happen or that they feel like they don't have enough friends and depression, just all the things just really spike with the social media and comparison amongst their friends or other people in the world. So,
because when we were younger, it was just you had magazines. It was just, it's a magazine. Look at the model in that magazine. And you just don't buy the magazine.
Right. And now you have people with filters. So, I mean, you can...
I mean, really,
anything.
the amount of what is available for comparison is
Yeah.
insane compared to what we had growing up. Yeah.
And speaking to the brain piece, so phones use blue light, right? And blue light works to activate our brain. And this is for teenagers and adults, but especially when you have teenagers with underdeveloped brains, that blue light is causing an activation in their brain that overcharges it, so to speak. So they may get frustrated faster.
Yeah.
They're not going to fall asleep as easily because their brain is still activated. Or when you think about mental resources, we're all born with a certain set of mental resources that we use to handle things on a daily basis, and those grow over time. So you've got teenagers with less resources to deal with things, and then when you're overloading it with blue light and technology and social media and all of these things, this constant activation, you're using up those mental resources. And so then they don't have enough mental resources to respond in a regulated manner, or to respond when you tell them to go to bed. They're maybe up for hours trying to fall asleep.
Yeah.
So there's various different ways that technology in itself activates the brain and prevents them from reacting in such a way that we would hope they would.
And with the like the anxiety and the depression, even off social media, is that also forming just because of all those resources being used up from, and so it's, does it make sense what I'm asking? Like, so it's causing this, because again, we keep thinking anxiety and depression is coming from social media and scrolling only, but it's more than that, right?
I want to explain it differently,
Yeah.
I think, and I don't think I did this last time. Jenny had mentioned with a fight, flight, freeze, fawn response in our body and this rush of these chemicals, adrenaline, that it takes an individual a minimum of 30 minutes to even be okay. For some of us, for me personally, it's 3 days. I'm not myself. What Dr. Arnold's talking about with blue light, I did have a specialist tell me that it takes a minimum of an hour for a brain to start to calm down after looking at a screen, the blue light,
That's
a tablet, anything. And so we're putting our kids to bed or saying, okay, we need you to cut it off. You've got school tomorrow. What do they take to bed with them? And they do that because they're afraid they're going to miss out on something overnight, or that a friend will need them. FOMO, we've talked about fear of missing out. So picture this. You have a child now who is on switch 24/7. Maybe they'll catch a couple of hours of sleep, maybe. So removing the technology from the bedroom, as you said, we want to get televisions out of the bedroom. We want to get tablets out of the bedroom. It may be viewed by your teenager that you're over controlling and mean. So again, education, and as a parent saying, let me tell you why I'm doing this and why I'm asking you to turn your phone off and quit looking at a blue light an hour before bedtime because I want you to sleep. I love you.
Yeah.
You need a good night's sleep.
I would say another thing that we're dealing with is also the Instagrams, Snapchat, TikTok, the things that learn our children. It's a quick scroll, and it's a dopamine release. So what that's teaching our kids is being able to sit through long periods of time in class, in movies, and other things. It's causing them to have like a shorter time frame of focus or being able to sit through the longer events. So in our home, I know with my kids, I have a 16-year-old and then twins that are 14. We don't allow Facebook. We don't allow Snapchat, Twitter, any of that, because again, it just causes so much damage to themselves, their brains, their self-esteem. So that is something that as they're getting older, they can potentially try to handle, but not right now.
Okay. And I guess too, as you guys ladies are saying this, I mean, they're on screens all day at school too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Think about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
And there is a time frame for littles and teens and bigs. I don't know if either of you know it. amount of time that they're even allowed to be on that for all of the blue light and other things that impacts them.
But they're doing everything on, I mean.
Yeah. And that's when we see the spike in the anxiety and the depression.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation. That's very interesting that we're doing that at school and we're seeing a rise, because you would think the rise would just be from phones. But when you think about all this information you just gave, the fact that it's not just phones, it is computers in general. They're on all day at school. And the rise in depression and anxiety in our adolescents, that's interesting.
I just spoke with a school counselor, and she told me that in her district, they are cutting back on the amount of times that the time that the kids are on their school-issued laptops. But it was fascinating because she said, we have to use them because that's how the test is given. So they have to know how to use a laptop because that's how they will test. Even though research shows that an hour at a time is sufficient before we start seeing our children getting angry, getting agitated while they're gaming, and they're heightened. But you're right, they go to school, there's their laptop, that's how they're being taught, but the motive is so that they can test.
Very interesting.
It's all over the place. It's probably a buzzword right now, is brain rot, right? So brain rot is the result of those short format videos, that constant need for a dopamine hit. And we see that increasingly more. I had to put a block on my daughter watches YouTube, and she tended towards YouTube Shorts. And finally, after a lot of Googling, I was able to find that there's a way to set it up to where you don't allow videos under a certain length of time. And so we had to put that block on her phone to prevent some of that. And it's not literally rotting your brain, like you're not disintegrating the brain, but it's causing a lot of impact on the chemical release in your brain and your mood and your level of anxiety and all of those things that children need the most stability on. They're actually getting probably the least.
You know, I'm also wondering if, and I don't know what research there is for this, because we're seeing kids agitated in school. And so we're looking at, well, do they have something that needs to be diagnosed? And now I'm wondering, are we jumping the gun and it's really just they're agitated because they're computer screens all day?
Right. I mean, and that is what we would see is a lot of individuals over the last few years are being diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, but a lot of the time, how much is that from too much TV, too much screen time, maybe staying up too late and not having enough regular sleep?
And the symptoms are the same, but the diagnosis doesn't technically, I'm not saying it doesn't technically have to be there because some do, but it's, that is so fascinating, ladies.
Well, I do psychological evaluations
Yeah.
in addition to therapy. And so a lot of times when people come in to me or bring their teenager into me and tell me that they think they have ADHD, I do a fairly comprehensive evaluation rather than just looking at ADHD. We look at everything kind of across the board for mental health. But a lot of times the previous symptoms that you would expect that had started in young childhood aren't there. They more become prevalent when the child starts using screens.
Fascinating.
And so because of that, a lot of times they don't meet criteria for ADHD. And I get parents that sometimes get upset with me. That, well, they're having these symptoms and these are symptoms of ADHD. Yes, they are. But it's not the disorder. There are other things at play causing these symptoms, and these hopefully can be reversed. And we can put limits on their screen time and change the way they do some things and build some skills to improve these symptoms versus going and putting them on a medication right away if it's not truly the disorder.
Right. Because would the medication even work if it's not ADD, ADHD? Right. Right.
That's fascinating.
And I think you had mentioned the word dopamine, and for those that don't know what that is, and that's a chemical in the brain. Basically, that's your pleasure center. And through the years, when I've researched substance abuse, and we talk about what happens with methamphetamines, the addiction is that dopamine spike. It's where that pleasure is beyond belief, and so we want more. We're finding too with our teens, they're having dopamine spikes for the number of likes they have on social media. So they're chasing this pleasure, and where their brain is between, again, I use the 15 and 17, is really used to rewards all the time. So they learn how to keep that pleasure going, and that is through the scrolling that Jenny mentioned, but it also is through those highs with the number of likes and followers and the rewards that they receive back instantly from their phones.
And to that, the likes, and then when they don't get enough likes, it sinks them, sinks their self-esteem. I mean, they're tying it to it. And then, okay, well, if this doesn't get likes, then let's try and do something better. Let's keep chasing what is.
Chasing it.
Yeah. So I wonder, because I know as a parent listening to you ladies, I'm like, okay, what can I do to cut all this back? Also knowing what you just said, there's an addiction there. There's a dopamine. So if parents cut this back, if we start taking things away, taking less, cutting down the time, I imagine there's going to be a lot of irritability, a lot of upset. So how can we navigate that as parents? Also wondering, what is the time frame that we stick to our guns and it finally dies down and they're not as irritable? Because it'll be frustrating for the parents. It's a punishment to the parents too, because the parents got to deal with, okay, now we got bad behavior because they're basically have a drug being taken away from them.
Right.
And so what is the time frame? We take it away from them, that their brain starts to settle down and be okay with the new terms.
I don't think that's necessarily what has to happen, because to me, I think you just substitute it quickly. So maybe we say, hey, everybody get in the car. We're going to go to the park and go for a walk.
Yeah.
Or start to introduce something that is a part of nature. Go fishing. Do something else. So if we take away and we don't substitute with something healthy, of course we're going to get a reaction because it feels like punishment. But I think good parenting alerts us to the fact, hey, we need to get outside.
Yeah.
And start building. If parents could build their list of to-do things that don't involve technology that the whole family enjoys doing, I don't think it's sleight of hand. I think you say, hey, everybody turn that off. We're going here. And really, it's not dramatic.
Well, and Dr. Baker is my mom. So something that we used to do growing up as a family is we would have family meetings and we would all sit down and we would talk about kind of the issues in the home, the good things, bad things, all of that. But I feel like instead of going to your teen and being like, this is how it's going to be, yes, you're going to have them very angry at you. You're unfair. You're doing horrible things.
Yeah.
However, if you involve them in it, like I am concerned about how much time you are playing Fortnite with all of your friends. I can hear you screaming till 12 o'clock. Can we sit down and come up with some other things that we could do? Maybe you and I can have a board game night. Maybe we can go work out, or hey, you know what? Maybe just even like sitting and watching a family movie together would be great. What do you think? And have them start to take part in it, because the more they can be involved in it, the easier the transition will be.
Yeah. Okay. I want to kind of talk, now that we kind of got technology, I want to talk about, them being in their rooms and space. And I kind of gave you guys, ladies, the rundown last time, and it was my husband and I, we are the parents that love to be with our kids. Like, we're not the ones that are like, let's go on vacation and leave them behind. Like, we genuinely love just being like a powwow. our kids are getting older and they don't want to be in the powwow all the time.
Right.
And so it's, my husband especially is really grieving that. I mean, really grieving, the kids, going to their room, and he's like, I just want you guys to just be in the room with me and talk. And I do too, but I think I also look at it as somebody who just gets overstimulated and also understands, like, I just need my space. I kind of look at that for the kids too. They're up. Eli has workout at 5:30 in the morning for football, and then he's at school, and then they have basketball. And I look at it as, oh, they're probably overstimulated like I am and just need quiet, And so it's, how do we navigate having that family time, knowing, and I think this is what I want to bring up too, because a lot of parents look at it as they're going to the room. It's so rude. It's so disrespectful. Like, why would you guys, and I don't think that's the case at all. So what is healthy? I know, Dr. Baker, you have mentioned, it's natural for them. Like, they don't even realize it, but they're naturally wanting to break away.
Oh, it's instinctual.
Yeah. So give us that.
Thank you. It's called a denning instinct. Denning as in a wolf going in a den. And that is instinctual in our teens. And the reason we all have that is because the goal is to, big words, individuate, to separate. So we bring our child into the world, they're nursing, we do everything for them, but we only have 18 years for them to go into the military, to go off to college across the United States. And so there are some natural things inside of our children that guide them in their independence from us. And I don't know that parents realize that. So one thing I always teach is to tell your teen, hey, listen, we don't have any plans tonight. If you want to spend some quiet time in your room, you're drawing, you want to talk to friends, you want to play a game, feel free. Yeah. But now remember, tomorrow night is family movie night.
Yeah.
So what you've done, you've given them a heads up so they're not shocked, but you've been kind. Yeah. And you've said, I'm going to trust you and give you your space, which is age appropriate because they want to be independent. But you've also been that parent to say, hey, what movie candy do you want tomorrow night? Or we'll do popcorn, but we will all be together tomorrow night. Yeah. That is their denning instinct has now been fed. So they're getting their cave time. But as parents, you've maintained control over what good parenting looks like in your home. And as your husband is missing that, he gets to look forward to popcorn night and movie night as a family.
Yeah. And I also, with that independence and them needing that independence and it being important and instinctual, not just including the home. So now I'm talking about outside the home. So wanting to be with their friends, wanting to, this is a question that I've had for a while is how much freedom do we give them? And how much freedom is too much freedom? I feel like there's a fine line and you don't want to underdo it. You don't want to overdo it. So for parents who are navigating, giving them that freedom and trust and building that trust, how can we do that in a healthy way? And I really am saying a big key to my question is building that trust, Well,
I think it's something that's built gradually. It's not we give them all of our trust to start with and let them go. Yeah. It's built gradually. So just like when we work towards a new skill, right? When we work to a new skill, we do it in steps. And so this is something that you want to kind of release your child to their independence in steps. So while they may want all that independence right now, doing things like what Dr. Baker said and allowing them time to do that, but then also coming back and saying, we're still going to do these things as a family is kind of the first step in that. Yeah. And then as they get a little bit older, they are going through that individuation process. So it is their goal and our goal for them to be independent adults.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe when they start driving, they get a little bit more independence. And then once they get to be 17, 18, a senior in high school, maybe they get more independence. So it's more of a stepwise process than just a let them go and hope that they maintain everything that we have taught them.
Yeah.
So,
and in that trust, so like one time my oldest, they were out, it was like 10 o'clock at night, and I saw on the Find My that they were somewhere that I was like, that's weird that you're there at 10 o'clock. And I texted him, called him. I said, what are you doing there? They're like, we're playing a game, throwing eggs at each other. I was like, you know, I don't care if you're throwing eggs at each other, like you do you, but why are you doing it there? Like, you know, you want to throw eggs at each other, do it at our house, do it at your friend's house, you know? And then immediately, and he's like, okay, well, we'll leave. Didn't fight me, nothing. He's like, okay, we'll leave. And I looked on Find My, and within minutes they were leaving, you know? But then another time after that, we're at a basketball tournament, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? They're like, just walking around. So I assume in my head, walking around the hotel. No, they're walking around the duplexes next door in a city that we don't even know. And so I'm just like, and it's where, and so this is kind of like for parenting, it's, you build trust, because I built trust with like the fact that like the whole egg thing, and because I've told you ladies before, my kids, if it's a first time offense, they do not get a punishment. They just don't, because you're learning, now if you do it again, then we're going to be talking. And so the fact that he left after the whole egg thing, I was like, oh, well, good. You know, he didn't fight me. He didn't. But then you walked around next door, and in my mind, I'm like, Eli, you told me a half truth. You said you're walking around, but you know that I would have wanted to know. And the fact that, you know, you and your team went next door. And so how do you navigate building trust, them also making decisions that can lose your trust, build it back up again? I tend to go, and this is what I said. I said, here's the deal, Eli, it's trust up, trust down. I said, this is a trust down situation, you know, and I don't want to shame him. I don't want to make him feel bad, but I also need him to know trust up, trust down. Trust is very important. And so how do you navigate that in a healthy way where they're going to do stuff. They just are. I mean, we all have been teenagers. We're not. And so it's just not being shocked that they're going to do stupid things. But how do you navigate like those conversations of trust without making them feel shame?
Yeah, we just actually had that happen with my 14-year-old. We found him on Discord, which is an absolute no for us. And again, went into it with my husband like, hey, buddy, we're not mad at you, but here are the reasons why you put yourself at risk. You know, we don't know who this individual is. They now have your cell phone. They know where you live, and you've sent a picture of them, which is, oh my God, why did you do that? So for me, again, I was just like, I just want you to know, you know, I love you. Don't ever do this again. And, you know, there are very scary people in the world. So being able to have like a true conversation with them, laying everything out there, generally you're going to get feedback from them. Like, I know, you know, we didn't do anything wrong. Nothing happened. Everything was fine. And it's like, I understand that. But at any point in time, something could happen. And that's what we don't want.
A rule of thumb that I was taught, and I think it stands true today, would be, okay, what is an appropriate curfew? So we're talking about boundaries. We're talking about what's fair. And I was always told 9 o'clock for 9th grade, 10 o'clock for 10th, 11 o'clock for 11th grade, and midnight for our seniors. There are extenuating circumstances to those things. And when you have a child like your daughter who tells on themselves, they do their homework without being asked. They're making good grades. They have good friends. Why would we not allow them additional privileges? And I use the word maturity a lot, that if you can show us that we can trust you, that shows us more maturity. And when you have more maturity, there are more privileges. However, we know right now, as you're individuating and you're going into your own and you're forming your own opinions and your own belief systems, that you think your friends are smarter than we are.
And peer pressure.
Yeah.
And so maybe you'll listen to us, but boy, your friends are never wrong.
Yeah.
So that's when we end up seeing our children making those brilliant decisions that just warm our heart. And 30 minutes later, they're making these immature decisions
Yes.
and just blowing your mind like, what just happened?
Yeah.
It's their desire to please their peers.
Yeah.
They also don't want to be the only one that says, hey, my mom just texted me, we have to leave. And you have 9 other kids that are like, well, my mom doesn't know I'm here and we're cool and we're not hurting anything. Why do you have to leave? They don't want to be that kid.
Yeah.
So we have to keep in mind establishing healthy, fair boundaries, what Jenny was talking about, and that's having those really good, solid conversations, but reminding them that what you did, and I don't mind the word immature, because I feel like it's like, wow, what your decision right now was not a 16-year-old that's going to have a weapon called a car that's going to drive around, because now that was about a 12-year-old. So give me the keys. And you do it that way.
Well, one thing I wanted to add to that is one thing that parents can do is remind themselves that teenagers are not little adults, that they haven't had the history and the experience that we've had as adults to teach us what comes next or what doesn't come next. They tend to believe that what's happening in the present is what's going to be happening forever. And so we have to keep that in mind as parents, that they're basing their decisions on that perspective without anything to draw from, that if I mess up, things will get better, or if I feel this way right now, I will not feel this way tomorrow or the next day. Whereas you and I know that. And so it's just like when they have girlfriends or boyfriends, you and I know that the breakup, horrible feeling that comes with it is not going to last for eternity. It's going to be this temporary feeling that we go through for a while, but then you move on, and maybe you find somebody else, or maybe you don't. Maybe you just move on with yourself and you enjoy that. And they haven't gotten to that